Visual design is often a subjective topic that leads to conversations about what people like or dislike. But it's not just about making things look pretty. We can make our conversations and critiques more objective using the 5 fundamental principles of visual design: scale, hierarchy, balance, contrast, and a group of principles called the Gestalt Principles. In this video, I'm going to use objective vocabulary to break down what works and what doesn't in a design using these principles. First up is the principle of scale, which refers to the size of elements and their relationship to each other. Larger elements tend to be more dominant, which draws attention and signals importance, while smaller elements become secondary. Let's take a look at an example. Here, we have a profile page in a web-based application. When referencing scale, I might mention how the profile photo and cover photo are the biggest elements on the page, drawing my eye to them first. I can also reference scale in the size of the text, where I'll assume that more important components use the larger font size, while less important components use a smaller font size. When discussing the principle of scale with your team, use objective vocabulary such as large, small, and dominant. Next up is visual hierarchy, which is how you visually organize information to signify its importance. It's about carefully guiding your audience through a design without actually sitting next to them and telling them where to go. Size, placement, and color of elements all help influence visual hierarchy. Looking at our same example, the elements have been designed to guide me down the page. The primary navigation on the left-hand side of the screen draws my eye first, since it's the boldest element on the page. Then my eye is drawn to the large, bright cover image, which takes me over to the middle main content section. Then it travels further down this content section. When you're reviewing or discussing designs, use objective terms like primary, secondary, and tertiary to explain visual priority. Moving on to our third principle, balance. When we talk about balance, we're referring to how visual weight is distributed in a design. Something that is well balanced avoids competing elements and utilizes space on the page in an effective way. In our example, I might bring up balance when talking about the distribution of elements in this main section. The About panel takes up more horizontal and vertical space, while the Team panel is shorter and thinner in comparison. Despite this, the page still feels balanced because there's an additional Activity panel underneath that Team panel. So there's a more even distribution of visual weight in the design. Let's compare that to what it might look like if it were unbalanced. Let's say I were to take out that Activity panel and I were just left with the About panel. This isn't a bad design necessarily, but because the distribution of elements is unbalanced, the viewer may miss the About panel when they're in the thick of their work. A design can be symmetrical or asymmetrical and still feel balanced. Use objective terms like weight, distribution, and heavy to explain how a design does or does not demonstrate balance. Contrast is all about opposites and differences. It's pointing out how elements stand out and create visual interest or capture attention on a screen. Like visual hierarchy, this can be achieved through color, size, shape, or font weight. Back to our dashboard example, we see contrast in the left-hand navigation, with it being a dark background with white text compared to the rest of the design that uses a light background with dark text. We also notice contrast in the bright call to action button against the more muted background color. When discussing contrast, using objective vocabulary that compares elements can be helpful. So bold versus neutral, bright versus subdued, and light versus dark. And finally, we have the Gestalt Principles. These are psychological principles that explain how people perceive grouped elements as part of a whole system. Examples of Gestalt principles are similarity, continuation, closure, proximity, common region, figure ground, and symmetry and order. In our dashboard, each section is enclosed in a container. Icons are accompanied closely by a label, and this little help icon is in close proximity to the component it's referencing. Utilizing these principles in your design can help simplify and organize information on the screen, maximizing the functional space for tasks. Whether you're designing screens or giving feedback, using objective vocabulary helps keep everyone aligned without falling into the trap of arguing about preferences. The best way to get better at this is to try identifying these principles in your existing designs. Grab a screenshot, open up your design file, and practice pointing out each principle. The more you do it, the more natural it will feel to discuss what works and what doesn't.
Thanks for watching. If you want to see more of our UX videos, take a look at these over here, and consider subscribing to our channel. On our website, nngroup.com, you can access our free library of over 2,000 articles. You can also register for one of our UX courses that offer live, hands-on training.